If you are well rested, then you are more productive. Categorically, whenever I feel like I'm losing focus or I'm struggling to get things done, I'm like, okay, well, what is missing? And rest isn't always about sleep, isn't always about, it's about non-doing time. It's about having space for creativity, for your brain to work in a different way. Yeah. I mean, I love the idea of a 4-day week being standard. And obviously I'm self-employed, so I actually have like a balance. I probably work the equivalent of 4 days over 5, but balancing in, like I always go and see my mum on a Wednesday afternoon. I meet friends for an outdoor swim on a Friday afternoon. There's time is about joy and connection as well.
Has your life or career ended up exactly where you expected it to be when you first began your journey? I would guess the answer is probably no. I don't think I've ever met anyone, maybe one or two out of however many hundreds, who said yes to that question. Another question for you: do you feel like your workplace is providing adequate support for your health, or at the very least enabling or supporting you as you try to live a healthy life, which does unfortunately include the workplace? Maybe a controversial question in some quarters as to whether that's an employer's responsibility or not. I think there is a balance to be had. There's definitely a line to be crossed in both directions. But either way, health is definitely the centre of today's conversation, particularly women's health and some of the challenges faced, the issues, the concerns that are rarely discussed in the modern workplace. So my guest today is Lesley Waldron of Lesley Waldron Health Coaching. As the name suggests, Lesley is a health coach. She provides support particularly to women going through perimenopause. She also does some work in outdoor fitness as well. We'll be talking about navigating that winding journey of life, perimenopause, and other women's health topics. We'll also be talking about the stigma, the social stigma, the workplace stigma in discussing some of these topics alongside mental health, burnout, and others. We will chat about change management, the psychology behind a lot of these questions, and more general workplace culture as well. Fair to say we go off on a number of tangents in this episode, but I think in the end we drew it all back together and all of those many roads ended up in Rome, if Rome is leadership and the topic of this episode. Yeah, I've just done it again, haven't I? But we definitely get there. It's an interesting conversation. I learned quite a lot from talking with Lesley, both during this recording and before, and these are important topics that any leader, any manager in the workplace needs to at least be aware of, if not well educated on. So stick around, do listen to the end as well, or check those show notes, the description down below for links to Lesley's website, how to find her, learn more about her, and some of the free resources that are on offer as well. Topics like this can feel really daunting, overwhelming, challenging for a leader, for a manager to appropriately address in the workplace. Knowing how and where and when to support people when they face some of the things that we talk about today can be a really stressful decision. It's definitely one of those times when imposter feelings are going to raise their head. And when you add that on top of the challenges that most leaders, managers, particularly the people doing it for the first time, are already facing, if you're doing it in a technical environment, stepping into that leadership role can be isolating. You will feel that high pressure. You will very quickly be facing feelings of self-doubt. This podcast and my Integrity Leaders online community surrounds new leaders like you with shared experiences, practical guidance, and a trusted network of peers to help you grow into a confident, capable leader faster and without losing yourself in the process. If you would like to learn more, the website is in the show notes. It's on the screen right now if you're viewing us as a video instead of listening to us as an audio podcast. And you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any questions or you'd like to learn more.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Lesley, welcome to Leading with Integrity.
Thank you, David. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me along.
Yeah, absolute pleasure to have you and pushing you in at the deep end, I'm afraid. Tell us your story so far, your origin story, if you will.
My origin story. I love this. Well, I would go back to 1976. No, we won't do that.
If you want.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Well, I guess I'm going to do a really quick, go back to when I was about 14. I don't normally say this, but when I was in an English class and she had us do this drawing, and you had to draw a house and a tree and a sunshine and a woodland and a path. And the idea was that this signified, kind of your relationship to your mother and your father. I can't remember any of it. The thing that I can remember is that she had you draw a path. And if you drew a straight path, it meant that you were going to have like a singular career, like you were going to go on this career path. And if it was a bit windy, then it meant that you might be doing lots of different things. I had drawn a straight path and I rubbed that path out when I was 14 and I drew myself a wriggly one because I knew really early on that I wanted to experience lots of different things in life. That the idea of going and having a singular career just didn't appeal to me. I was a bit of an all-rounder, so kind of reasonably good at maths and science, but also reasonably good at English and history and maths and whatever. Not so great at art. I'm definitely not a singer, but and so that's kind of almost been at the back of my mind, or perhaps I made it come true. I've worked mainly in non-profits and public sector organisations. A brief spell in my 20s teaching English as a foreign language in Spain and then in Argentina, because that was a brilliant way to go to places that I wanted to go to and to improve my language skills too. I lived initially in London. I worked in a university where I got to travel all over the world, speaking to prospective students. Very interesting working with academics, and an approach to leadership, I think, in public sector and non-profits, which is quite different sometimes to the corporate world. And about 12 years ago, I hit kind of a burnout. I was in a senior project management role. I was working on an area of government policy underneath a coalition government, which was a bit interesting. Nobody could agree on anything. And I also wasn't sleeping because my youngest child had decided that sleeping at night was not for him. And so I hit a bit of burnout and took myself off. I'd ended up taking a month off to recover. And in that month realized that I really needed to do something different. I'd been working for that organization for about 6 years in 3 different roles, but that was the longest I'd been one place. One of the things that was really helpful to me was spending time outside, focusing on kind of deep self-care in terms of practicing meditation and eating well and nourishing myself differently and finding ways to get rest, even if I couldn't sleep at night. And so in that month, I decided to hand in my resignation, work for 3 months' notice, and train as a personal trainer. And so complete contrast. I've never been kind of particularly sporty. I always like trying new things. So I'll climb a mountain. I used to rollerblade around London. I'll run half marathons is probably my limit. And I'm always happiest outside. And so I started working as a personal trainer, mainly working with women, supporting them to create a positive relationship with exercise, a positive relationship with their bodies. So my marketing strategies were all about, my marketing and the conversations I had were all about how do you feel and how do you want to feel rather than how do you want to look? How do you want other people to perceive you? It's like that inner work. I very quickly got interested in perimenopause and menopause, partly because some of my burnout symptoms were around my skin issues and changes in my menstrual cycle. And so somebody said, well, maybe you're perimenopausal, which I found horrifying, and then realized that it wasn't just me that was experiencing that in their late 30s, but lots of my clients were too. So I did a course called Third Age Woman, which was designed for fitness instructors and personal trainers and physiotherapists working with women in that transition period from peri to postmenopause. It was fascinating, but I got really interested in the integrative side of it. So it's not just about movement, not just about nutrition, but what's the whole life balance going to be? Because obviously I'd had to rethink what my life balance was. That kind of treadmill of going to work and picking up kids and scrambling around to make a meal in the evening, going to bed exhausted, trying to catch up on housework at the weekends. I felt like, you're just stuck in this not random, but roller coaster where there's no sort of breathing space or center space. And it's like, how can you rebalance things? So I got very interested in coaching, met somebody at a conference who runs a coaching school for women's health. At the time, it was the only one in the world, still is pretty unique in its offering, in that it focuses on women's health, perimenopause, endometriosis, adenomyosis, as well as other chronic health conditions that predominantly affect women. And so I did the coaching and did a coaching certification, then got interested about how mindset gets in the way of women taking action. So I also got interested so I did an NLP, and I basically just keep layering on my learning. So I've ended up as an integrative women's health coach. I specialize in peri to postmenopause transition and burnout. So women who are in that phase who don't want to get buried down wearing this label that says menopause, and so therefore I can't do anything. But actually seeing it as an opportunity to rethink that life balance and what self-care really, really looks like for you. So so that's where I am now. And I offer one-to-one coaching, as well as I go in and offer workshops in organizations. I do a bit of speaking. And in the last 5 years, I've become a carer for my mum, who's got Alzheimer's. My kids are now teenagers. I am properly in this sandwich generation where there is this multiplicity of demands on my attention and time. And so actually, even though I feel like I've reorganized my life so that I'm well supported and I look after myself really well, there's still always something that's going to happen to upset that balance. So so that's where I am now, juggling those care responsibilities with running a business and being a part of my community as well.
Okay. So there's a lot of things to pick up on in there. Let's start at the beginning with, I love that story about the straight versus the windy road. I don't think I ever did that exercise, but if I did, I feel like parts of my life, it would have been a roundabout. Just going around in circles. Yeah. Did you have awareness at the time of like you were consciously changing that straight to a wiggly, or was it just sort of subconscious?
I definitely knew that for some reason. I think so. My dad, so I had my tutor at secondary school had done quite a few different things before he became a teacher. And I loved his stories, as well as this sense of like this diverse, he was a very funny man, but this sense of like a diverse career. My dad also had kind of like, he's a working class lad from the West Midlands who went to university because it sounded like a laugh, and then somehow ended up at Oxford doing a postgrad, and then just kind of fell into all kinds of interesting things. And he worked in sort of very early days of software and data management and stuff, and then set up his own business. So I think part of me was that sense of, my mum had run, she'd done things like run dance classes, set up a catering business, so I guess I was surrounded by people who hadn't gone, and the idea of going, other friends' parents who might be bank managers or are accountants or have a job where you just sat in the same office day after day. It's like, I know that I don't want to do that.
I'd like to say I was the same, but I didn't really do it on purpose. It was more of an accident.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is accidental, but I think But I have definitely over the years, like the going off to Spain thing, I was like, I went to Spain initially because I wanted to go to South America. I had done Spanish to A-level standards, but wanted to improve my Spanish. And I did my CTEFLA certification in Madrid and then spent 3 months kind of teaching for that same school. And then as well as I didn't do a Spanish class while I was there, but I just used Spanish a lot and that really improved it. And then I went to Spain and went off to Argentina and it was a very different experience. The Spanish is different. You had to be a little bit careful with some words that meant things that were very rude if you weren't careful.
Yeah.
And then, and then you meet when you do that kind of traveling and you just meet people who've had incredibly interesting lives doing a variety of different things. So I think all of that just kept the options open. And I'm an optimist, so that helps. I know it will always work out in the end. So
yeah, I think that's the only way to maintain sanity these days. Actually.
It is at the moment. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so the second thing to pick up on from your origin story is the burnout point. So we've talked about burnout quite a lot on the podcast in the past, and I think one of the common themes that always emerges is this link to sleep. But I think what's interesting about your story there is when we talk about sleep and burnout, it's more, I guess, a recovery tool, like the best way to get back. But from your story, it sounds like the cause and effect there was the other way around. I mean, was the lack of sleep the cause of burnout or vice versa or both? What do you think?
So I think that's a question that you could never actually fully answer because they're so interconnected. The work that I was doing, like literally the project I was leading, I left. A year later, they were still working on that same project and it never reached a conclusion. So that kind of frustration and that sense of, but I think probably for me, it was more led by the sleep than the work side of things. So, because I think at that point I was working 3 days a week. So in theory, I had this recovery time every week, but it's not recovery time when you've got 2 tiny children anyway. But the lack of sleep was probably the biggest part of it. So then using sleep as a recovery is really hard because I was running on adrenaline. My stress levels were so high because I was so tired and trying to keep it going and kind of using sugar and caffeine to keep me going, which then means that by the time you try and sleep, you're well wired and tired and it's very hard to get that. So what I did, and I found that even if I went to a friend's house and tried to sleep there, or went to my mother-in-law's and tried to sleep there and have a night off, I still couldn't sleep because I was so used to being woken up every hour and a half by a wailing child. He is adorable now, so it's all good. But, so meditation was a really important strategy. So I found that using hypnotherapy tracks that kind of almost talk you into a state of really deep rest, really calm your brain down, meant that when my son hasn't had a nap, I would generally in the same room or sitting outside with him in the buggy and asleep, and I would listen to a meditation while he was napping. So I knew I could respond to him. So that wasn't keeping me awake. But I also knew that I was able to deeply rest, and that was one of the really helpful strategies that I found.
Yeah.
And we learnt the power of a nap, which I'm still quite fond of today.
Oh, yeah, me too. Always have been. Yeah. I can't quite nap like I did when I was a teenager, where it's like 4 hours on the trot. That just gives me headaches now. But not that I have the time. Well, sometimes at the weekend. Anyway, let's not talk about napping. We'll be going for hours on that alone. So I think it's, again, there's a familiar part of that story, that sort of vicious cycle people get into with burnout, where it's the stress stops you doing the next thing, but then you don't feel alert enough to do the work. So you get the caffeine going and the energy drinks and all of that. And then when you do have the capacity or the time to rest, you can't because you say you're wired. And although I have to say, I found with caffeine, I reached a threshold where if I'm having enough of it, it stops having the effect you want anyway. So it didn't really affect my sleep.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
But it also didn't help me stay alert for work. So
No,
it was kind of...
I mean, I think so, because one of the things with caffeine is it suppresses the, what does it block the receptors for adenosine, like the sleep, the hormone that drives your sleep need.
Yeah.
And it kind of blocks it, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're more alert. It just means you're less sleepy. But I've always been very sensitive to it anyway. So I would generally find, even in my 20s, when, you could throw anything at me, generally I'd bounce back. I couldn't really drink caffeine after about 1 or 2 in the afternoon, especially coffee, or I wouldn't sleep at night. So we're all more sensitive to it. Whereas my husband can still have an espresso after a meal if we're out and sleep like a baby, whereas I definitely can't do that.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I wouldn't describe it as an addiction except as a joke, but I do love my coffee. Like, I need it. I don't need it. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. I have one cup of coffee a day generally, and I really savor it. And but I can absolutely do without it.
Yeah, one's not enough. However, as I've got a bit older, I have stopped having it in the afternoon. Like, I switched to tea in the afternoon because we're British, and tea is always fine.
Tea is a requirement about 4:30, I think. I once worked in a charity where they had a tea lady.
Ooh. And
what was lovely about that was, so the tea lady would come with a tea trolley at about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning and about 3 in the afternoon. So everyone would gather around the tea trolley and have a cup of tea or a coffee and a biscuit. But it was a way of bringing a relatively small organisation that was doing a lot of diverse different things together. And it was quite fun. Felt very old fashioned, but then they moved into a new building and they had a kitchen.
Oh,
that was the end of the tea lady.
Yeah, that sounds kind of nice.
So they come back to burnout there, because what that tea lady did, what having that trolley did, was gave everybody a rest. So, because we often think about rest as being sleep or maybe lying down or whatever, but it was a break from deep focus or stress. And it was a really nice, and then you're connecting, which we all need, which is restful. You would generally stand, unless you were really busy, even the chief exec would come out and get their cup of tea. So, whereas then once you move into an office where there's where there's a kitchen, you might stand around while the kettle's boiling, but then you take your tea back to the desk because it might just be you in the kitchen, or you might be making a cup of tea, making a tray to take to a bunch of other people who then drink their tea at the desk. So then you don't get those little pockets of rest during the day. And I think that kind of sense of, I have to be here at my desk all the time, present in front of my screen, or else is one of the contributors to kind of burnout and stress, isn't it? Like not having that break during the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a cultural aspect there as well, in terms of like normalizing taking breaks, because I'm trying to think of an office I've ever worked in where anyone actually took their legally mandated breaks except for at lunchtime. Yeah. And I can't. Like, I don't think I've ever seen it happen, apart from when I was in a bit of a mood and did it myself just to make a point, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
But the tea lady things, I think that's kind of a lovely bit of, it's quite a British culture thing as well.
Yeah.
And then there's the workplace culture of it. And I feel like that's something we've sort of lost. Even before COVID and everyone stopped working in offices. Absolutely, which I have to say, I think on the whole is a good thing anyway. But
there's so many positives about the flexible working that I particularly for women who tend to take on the bulk of childcare, even if they're working full time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I sort of feel like I missed out on that experience. The closest we ever had was like a designated tea boy, which was whoever was the most junior person or most recent hire. Yeah. It was their job to make the tea for everyone else. And yes, when it was me, I didn't enjoy that experience at all.
No, no, absolutely. No, and I think that that was the only place I'd ever worked which had that. And
Yeah.
I'm a bit older than you are, but it's but when I talk to other people, I'm not sure many people worked in a place where there was a tea trolley at a certain time of day.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you'd probably have a Zoom meeting booked in, so you wouldn't be able to go and get it. And then you have to get your tea in between.
Yeah.
But it comes back to some of the ways in which I work with my clients is like, well, actually, how do you find, coming back to burnout, their lives are so busy and so full, but actually thinking about finding pockets of rest. Like, and that rest could be that you go from one meeting to the next slowly. So if it's physical meeting rooms, I can remember working for one place where it was like, most of them were on the ground floor, but there were a couple that were up there. You just walk slowly rather than always rushing into places, so that you've got time to take a breath and just kind of settle yourself from one to the next. And a Zoom meeting, take 5 deep breaths between leaving one and entering the next one. So there's tiny, tiny pockets of time where you create a more restful experience, can help kind of keep you coming out of that fight or flight, out of that really high adrenaline, busy momentum, into a slightly more settled state in your brain, which actually then is better for decision making, better for connection, better for holding your boundaries as well. So
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, I mean, I would say if the only opportunity for rest you can get is walking a bit slower between one meeting and the next, that's a pretty damning statement about where you're working. But I agree, you've got to find that rest in whatever form you can, wherever you can. Because you're right, it's necessary.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we can tell ourselves that we can't rest. And we just need to open ourselves up to finding, we've gone down a little tangent here, but I worked with a client once where her partner had a disability, she had a young child, and she worked in a reasonably senior position in a university. And life felt really busy and she was exhausted all of the time. She was perimenopausal. She'd been back and forth to the doctors who just wanted to give her antidepressants. And she was like, I know this isn't what I need. That was definitely not part of my conversation with her anyway. But what she started doing was, first thing in the morning before she'd gone to work, was having a cup of tea, coffee. She was a coffee drinker. Having a cup of coffee in her favorite chair, looking out in the garden. So for 5 minutes, she called it her sit and sip moment. So she would just sit and sip her coffee, but not doing anything, not looking at her phone, not listening to the radio, just looking out in the garden and concentrating on drinking that coffee. That was it. Not worrying about what happens next. And then she would get up and get on with her day. And what that gave her, that 5 minutes, that's all it was gave her like a mental break, so that actually it helped her realize that how much better she felt after 5 minutes. It was only 5 minutes. And then she started working out where else she could go, in what area, how else she could manage her time at work to get those 5 minutes. And that started to be that she started to turn down meetings, or always put in a buffer. And then I think she spoke to her boss about putting in, like, she would have Friday afternoons when one afternoon a week when no one could book a meeting with her. So that was booked off so that she could catch up on all of the admin around what it was that she was doing. And she can, but it started with that 5 minutes. I caught up with her like about 6 months. I often check in with clients 6 to 12 months after I've worked with them, because it's about embedding habits long term. And that sit and sip was the beginning of a few other changes that she made. I checked in with her 6 months later, and she was like, she'd bought herself an electric bike so she could cycle to work. She was working from home one day a week. Her daughter was starting school, but she was rearranging her hours so that she could make sure that she was at pickup X number of days a week. And she was moving on in her career. But it was just like she'd given herself the space to put in the boundaries and ask for what she needed. She was really good at her job. Nobody wanted to lose her. So it's, sometimes those small things, we need to open our minds to them, and then we can make a lot of changes, I think.
Yeah, I think it is important finding those little rituals sort of thing that work for you. I love the sit and sip. That's such a cool concept.
Yeah.
Like, great branding there as well.
Yeah.
I also really love when you find those sort of cliches that are just so true and so relevant. And the one in this sort of context that's always stuck with me is a change is as good as a rest.
Yeah.
And you kind of hinted to already when you're doing that deep work and the tea lady comes around, that's a great excuse to go and do something different. But I've found that particularly since I've been working for myself, by myself, having a bit of freedom and control to experiment with those sort of things. Sometimes you can, like when no one's going to give you that judgmental stare from across the office if you just decide, you know what, I'm going to stop working on this report now. I know the deadline's tomorrow, but I'm not feeling it. I'll do it later. I'm going to go and do a podcast or, I don't know, watch this educational video. Usually educational, yeah. Definitely not Amazon Prime. No, certainly not. No. But sometimes that change, because your brain just needs to change gears sometimes and just do something else. And there's that other old cliche, isn't there, about the harder you try and look at something, the less likely you are to see it, sort of thing. And sometimes you just need to look over there and then you'll catch it in your periphery. Yeah. I think the same sort of thing happens in your brain sometimes with thinking.
100%. Like it's amazing how you can feel stuck on something and you can go for a walk. And while you're out for a walk, like, you're not trying to think about it. You're just kind of out for a walk and suddenly the solution will come to you because your brain is still working on it behind the scenes. But when you try, it's like
I love it when that happens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's all tied up in like workplace culture, but also mindset, isn't it? Because particularly when we first come out of those kind of rigid workplaces, I think I hear this from a lot of founders and solopreneurs making that adjustment to, oh, hang on, actually, I don't need to have 20 meetings a day anymore.
No.
They were never productive. I always knew they weren't productive. It just wasn't within my gift to say no to them, or I didn't feel able to. And having kind of learning that confidence to just take control of your own sort of time, I suppose. Really.
Boundaries. I mean, this is like a lot of the work that I do is like that. So I'm an integrative health coach, right? So, and I've got this specialism in perimenopause and menopause, but most of the work I do with my clients is on rest and boundaries, because from that, everything else can follow so much more easily. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I think it's particularly difficult, isn't it, though, when you're in someone else's company. I don't know, towards the end of my previous career, I was what you might call a disgruntled worker. So I found it quite easy to set boundaries because I knew it would annoy people that were annoying me. But in a happier workplace situation where, so maybe like 5 years before that, I did find it very difficult to set those boundaries because I didn't want the perception of not wanting to work. I wanted to do the best I could. I didn't want to be the guy who was always saying no to things.
Yeah.
And so you do. And then those habits form. And before you know it, you've got this horrible culture in your workplace. And I think there's a lesson there for leaders as well about that, the tone they set.
Yeah, absolutely.
And whether they're not just allowing people to set the boundaries, but encouraging them to set boundaries.
Absolutely. And I remember one of the roles I had in a university, and I can remember my boss being really disparaging about a woman who had come back for work. She was at the same kind of equivalent management level as him, but in a different department. And she'd come back after having a baby, and she was setting really firm boundaries around her time and availability. And he was like, well, she doesn't turn up until 10 o'clock and she takes her an hour to settle in and she's not really being productive. And that kind of that ends up in your head as being, oh, I've got to make sure that if that was ever me, I'd need to prove myself. Even though that's not how I thought about the world. It was still there, like coming back from maternity leave, that comment made a decade before was still kind of in your head, this sense of, we can't make allowances. You have to be present and look like you're working. So,
Yeah, that sort of thing really annoys me, actually, because it's toxic, isn't it? It's so pervasive and unpleasant. And anyone in a position such as you at the time, who is a reasonable, nice person who wants to do the best for people they work with, is going to take that to heart.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually really irresponsible when managers say stuff like that, especially when they know they're being overheard.
Yeah.
I feel like as well there was a bit of jealousy at play there. Like he was like, I wish I could do that.
I think so. I mean, he was an interesting character. So
yeah, I think quite a good example though, where because he was talking about a contemporary, I've had situations before where it's like the top leadership saying things about people at various points of your hierarchy again, which I don't really like, but and I think that even more so is that's really like setting the wrong tone, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know. I'm a cynic. I think people in those positions do it on purpose because they intentionally want people to react in the way that you did, because then they feel like they're getting more out of their workers. Yeah. Anyway, so these are all things we shouldn't be doing, I think.
Yeah.
In summary.
Yeah, things not to do. How not to get, because you don't get the most out of people if they're in that. If you're just showing up at your desk. Remember, I crashed my car once on my way to work because I was so sleep deprived and I'd made a bad judgment about what lane to go in. And I just carried on to work. So a lorry had just basically gone into the side of my car on the motorway. I just carried on. I just stopped really briefly and then just carried on, parked in the car park, went to work, and then burst into tears a couple of hours later. But because I felt like that's what I should be doing.
Yeah, no, that's horrible.
Just go to work.
Yeah. I didn't do that. I haven't had a big crash, but I did get rear-ended on the way to work once, and I had whiplash and stuff, and I was just like, yeah, I'm going home. Got a headache already, I'm not coming to the office.
Yeah.
But I also had that same boss actually once really tore a strip off me, really berated me because on the way to work, he knew how long my commute was. He had texted me while I was driving, so I didn't read it because I was driving, and at the time that would have been illegal. Still is, obviously, but
yeah.
And the text message was to tell me not to go to office number 1, but go to office number 2 that day instead. So I arrived at office number 1, I saw the text, and it was about 5 to 9. So I'm sorry, I've only just seen your text. So he berated me for not checking my text messages sooner. And I'm like, well, I was driving. I couldn't. Oh, that's not my problem. Cool. Right. Well, I'll be there in about half an hour.
Really unhelpful.
Isn't it? Anyway, let's not talk anymore about horrible boss stories. Although I fear we may get into it in the next questions anyway. So the work that you do today, particularly with midlife women and the challenges that they tend to be going through, which you've talked about already, what do you think the average workplace, I hate saying the average workplace, but most workplaces are getting wrong or getting right for those women, the people who are working in their organizations?
I think it's really interesting how, so there's this new, there's new legislation coming in about managing women's health in the workplace and menstrual leave and that kind of thing. And there's a bit of a concern about what that might mean about employing women. Do you get put off employing women? And I think, so an example of somebody I spoke to recently is really interesting. So I've gone into her organization and they've got this menopause, they've got a menopause network. So they have got a support group, and they work on making the environment in the office more comfortable, on thinking about changing schedules if women are really struggling with their symptoms, on making sure that there are sanitary products in the bathroom, that there's, if someone's struggling with night sweats, maybe there's a spare t-shirt around that they could change into, or, really lovely. I've come in and given talks on managing different aspects of perimenopause, as well as on menstrual health and menstrual cycle tracking. So they're doing lovely stuff for all aspects of health in the workplace. I just come in on the women's health side. But when I had a conversation with her for doing some market research on a program that I'm developing, she's menopausal, and she cannot ask. So she asked if she could go from 40 hours a week to a 37-hour a week contract, and she was told no. And she doesn't want to give up or change her job. She feels like she's worked so hard to climb the structure. She feels like, and she doesn't want to let down the people who came before her who helped open the doors. So that's what's really interesting, isn't it? Like, so an organization can be ticking the boxes and can have leadership who want to support women's health, who are ticking boxes. But yet deep down ingrained in that culture is this sense that if you want to succeed, you can't you have to push yourself this hard. There's this much work to do and it's got to be done. Rather than stepping back and going, if we put our employees at the center and look at what's the structure of the work plan, why can you not give somebody 3 hours off a week? 40 hours a week is quite a lot anyway. So, I think so it's really interesting, isn't it? How you can have how you can be doing the right thing, but actually the culture still is that we should work to a system that actually is created on, so men tend to have different, you have the same level of testosterone, right? Every day, same level at the beginning of the day as at the end of the day, same level at the beginning of the month, at the end of the month, same level. It doesn't start to go down until, I think it starts to decline again in your 40s, 50s, but very, very slowly. The equivalent drop in female hormones at the end of our menstrual cycle, so drops of estrogen and progesterone, the equivalent to about 125 years worth of testosterone slowly going down every menstrual cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned that fact the other day. I was quite intrigued.
It sounds like a lot. Yeah.
It sounds like a lot. Although actually I should probably say I haven't fact checked that. So don't. Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
we'll have a
but I found it quite interesting. But it does. But it's like so that you've got workplaces mainly built on like a structure that says you've got the same energy at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, so you can be productive all day long. And we know that's not possible. Like, half the workforce is slumping at their desk at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that every day in the month is the same for everybody. But we know that like everybody struggles with their mental health. Everyone could have could have an illness going on for them or for somebody else in their family that's going to affect how they show up. And supporting women's health and supporting a balance of that balance of energy and being able to flex through that, I think supports everybody, because you're able to say, well, actually, do you know what? If you're having a really tough time, we've got a way in which we can support you by going, why don't you work from home this week and we'll, rejig your work patterns. I mean, I'm being very generalistic because actually it depends on the environment that you work in. And it depends on the pressure of that. I've got clients who are lawyers who end up having these insane work suddenly bunches up and they're working like 20-hour days to get a contract finished. And then it's like, well, that's just how everyone's expected to do the work. I think there's got to be a better way of planning that, right? But I don't know enough about that field to be able to say it. So workplaces are doing the right things, but they're not necessarily adapting brilliantly to the flexibility of needs day to day. And there is something really important about it not being about singling out women and going, well, if you're menopausal, then you must take this opportunity to rest. You must go to this, because everyone's affected differently in a different way. And lots of women don't want to wear that menopause label heavily around their neck, that they don't want to be identified. We live in a culture that celebrates youth, don't we? So actually, just like I was when somebody suggested I was perimenopausal 12 years ago and I was horrified, I wouldn't want somebody to assume that about me. I mean, I definitely don't mind that now, because I've spent 12 years learning about perimenopause and talking about it. But back then I wouldn't have wanted that. Different people don't want that sense of intrusion. So a company and acknowledging that at the center of all of this are individual women with individual experiences, just as there are individual men with individual experiences. That if we've got a culture that acknowledges that and can be reasonably flexible and allows the boundaries to be established, then that's better. But it is fantastic that there is so much more conversation about women's health and about menopause. I always say, I can't remember if I said this to you in our conversation, about how when I first started talking about perimenopause and writing about perimenopause, say 10 years ago, it was always spell checks in a Word doc, or when I was writing a blog or a social media, there was always little red dots underneath the word perimenopause. But that doesn't happen anymore because there's so much more conversation about it. And I think that's got to be a positive thing, as long as it doesn't become demonized or count against you if you want to change jobs and someone's, oh, perimenopausal, we're going to have to give them X amount of leave. Just like women of childbearing age can find that that's a problem for them as well.
I think there's a lot of issues, let's call them, tied up in the same conversation here, aren't there? But yeah, I think there's two sides to it, aren't there? I totally agree with you. It's about the individual, and I think any effective leadership recognises individuals and does its best to create the environment for every individual to succeed in whatever form that may look like. But I think on the other side of it, there's also that awareness piece, isn't there? Particularly with the topics like menopause that have been traditionally quite taboo in the workplace. Mental health would be another one. Just general health, frankly, at certain points in history. So having that awareness, being able to have that sort of the psychological workplace safety where you can talk about those things at work if you want to, but also kind of strike that balance between respecting people's privacy as well. Because you're right, a lot of people don't want to talk about these things. Although then the question becomes, why don't they? Is it because of the social expectation? Is it because of the culture in your workplace that if you talk about this, we're going to find a way to sack you? You know, that sort of thing. Which, it's. I don't know. There's no easy answers, are there? But I have to think that talking about it more has to be a good thing. That has to be the start of the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And women's health in general has been understudied. So there's still more investment in erectile dysfunction and hair loss than there are in things like endometriosis and adenomyosis. So really heavy bleeding, really painful periods that affect 1 in 10 women. Whereas erectile dysfunction doesn't affect that same proportion of men. But there's more money in it. And more money invested in it. So there is this sense of a lack of knowledge and awareness around women's health. Women have generally just been treated as small men, or as too complicated to bother studying. And so we have kind of male-centered medicine, but male-centered structures all around us. It's so embedded, we don't even know what it would look like if it wasn't. But I won't go down that route today. But it is just interesting if we were to step back and go, if we put everything at the center differently and go there where there is equity between how we think about health and well-being, and that actually if you support the individual, it's like women leave the workplace or don't put themselves for promotion in this menopausal phase in their 40s and 50s because their energy is lower, their confidence is gone, they might be feeling they might be experiencing physical symptoms, or it might simply be that they are struggling with brain fog and it's I can't show up in a meeting and do this. But then if you don't support those women and you lose that wisdom and experience from the workplace, and you recruit to replace that, but you never fully replace that. When women come out the other side, you're almost you are much more similar to men in terms of having an equal level of, your hormones are on a very much steadier level month by month. And you've got all of that wisdom and experience behind you. That's when women can absolutely thrive in their 50s, 60s and 70s. So, but the support needs to be in place here in the right way, valued. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the I think the wider like structural challenge there is worth. I mean, it is important. It's worth mentioning, and thinking about it too, because I don't want to get conspiracy theory kind of into it, but there are definitely trends. So we look in workplaces, right? So I was looking, I think it only came out last month. There was a report on diversity in boards and leadership teams in the FTSE 100, for example. Even today, less than 10 of those have women CEOs.
Yeah.
And so you do think, without going into the reasons why, because I mean, that could take us all day to get to the bottom of that, couldn't it? Probably longer. I'm sure people are looking at it. But like the practical reality there is, if the majority of these businesses are led by men who probably don't understand it, don't want to think about it, certainly don't want to talk about it, partly because of the history of the workplace and the fact that it has been a taboo subject and there's all these kind of institutional biases involved as well.
Yeah.
Then of course it's not going to be part of the conversation. And then if you look at fields like, so you're talking about medical research, right? If you look at the average stats for doctors and things, I don't know these off the top of my head, but I'd be willing to bet over the last 50 years, the majority of doctors have been men, certainly in the research fields. Maybe that's why, because there's that unconscious bias, or just doesn't occur to them, doesn't interest them. So maybe that's why there hasn't been as much research into women's health. I'm just making that up off the top of my head, but it seems reasonable, doesn't it?
Well, it is a fact. Like there's no interest in it. There hasn't been interest. It's changed now because actually there are more and more female doctors coming through the system as well. So
exactly.
And it will continue to change in positive ways. I mean, that's quite exciting. Like 20, 30 years from now, if it doesn't, we don't all get blown up. Things could be really different. Could be really different for my daughter when she's going through perimenopause herself. But like she's already heard the word and isn't afraid of it. So, as has my son. So,
yeah. Well, I hope so. I have to say though, that report for the FTSE 100, it's leveled out, I think, because it wasn't.
So basically, it was going up and it's not now. In fact, I think it might almost be going down. And there is a real, again, the situation that we're living through, the world that we're living in, there's a real attack on women's rights in coming from multiple angles, which I feel confident, because I'll go back to being an optimist, will be short-lived and is like the last throes of this particular phase of our culture, and that it has to shift because otherwise we're basically going back to the dark ages. So I think it's only a minority of people who actually want that. And as long as our democracies survive, I think that's going to go away. I'm like you, I have to believe that. Otherwise you've got to, because otherwise hope is really important in for our well-being, like our mental well-being and our physical well-being, just as joy is. So when things like when you are struggling with illness, or with whether it's mental or physical illness, when you're going through dealing with difficult situations in your life, if you give up hope in a positive outcome, then it's much harder to deal with it. So we can look at the broader what's going on in the world, but we can also look for the opportunities for help. And we can do the same with our, often I think with that burnout, with this midlife craziness, it's things were really complicated and difficult with my mum. She was getting herself into all kinds of scrapes. And you're like, do I go and pick her up off the floor there? Or do I pick my kids up from school there? How do you juggle it all? You just have to focus in on gratitude and joy when things are really hard. And then it sounds so like to be grateful for the opportunity that I can look after my mother and go and pick her up off the floor. And it's really hard, and I acknowledge how hard it is. And I'm grateful that my kids are healthy and I can go and pick them up from school, even if the juggle is hard. I think that's how we cope well with the bigger picture as well as our individual ones as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then just quickly to go back to the 40 versus 37 hours, I think there is a fundamental thing here as well, which is less about the same issues, although I think it does play into them, about like how we define work. And I think we're still stuck in this kind of, it's not even like 50s, 60s mentality, is it? It's like, it goes back to the Industrial Revolution and like, not to get Marxist about it, but the means of production and things.
Yes.
Where we're still thinking of work in terms of a physical location and a period of time.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a factory or whatever.
A unit of production,
Yeah. Because if you're in a factory, like time equated to productivity, because all the time you're in front of the machine, whatever the machine was, you were doing more things, right? And that just doesn't apply anymore. And it hasn't for quite a long time, I think, ever since they went automated in these production lines and they put robots in there and whatever. And I do think that, I mean, even back then, 3 hours probably wasn't going to make a huge amount of difference. Maybe if everyone had 3 hours, I guess it might have. But these days, especially in office environments where you're doing knowledge-based work, for all of the reasons we've talked about already, that's just such an out-of-date perspective on it.
Absolutely.
But then also, when you look at some of the studies, like, I can't remember which country it was, one of the Scandinavian countries trialled a 4-day working week.
Yeah.
And the results they achieved from that was actually higher productivity from less time. And lo and behold, your logic is gone for your saying no to a 37-hour contract.
If you are well rested, then you are more productive. Like, categorically, like absolutely. So whenever I feel like I'm losing focus or I'm struggling to get things done, I'm like, okay, well, what is missing? And rest isn't always about sleep, isn't always about it's about non-doing time. It's about having space for creativity, for your brain to work in a different way. I mean, I love the idea of a 4-day week being standard. And obviously I'm self-employed, so I actually have like a balance. I probably work the equivalent of 4 days over 5, but balancing in, like, I always go and see my mum on a Wednesday afternoon, and I meet friends for an outdoor swim on a Friday afternoon. There's time is about joy and connection as well. But that's a privilege that I've got. That's a massive privilege for which I'm very grateful. You can't always do that if you're working in an office and for someone else. But that's where boundaries come back in again.
Definitely.
But I mean, the 37 versus 40 hours, I think, is a really interesting. It's like, that's because a role has been quantified in terms of the number of hours that are required, which feels very kind of, like mechanical.
Yeah.
For what is effectively a people management role.
I don't want to be unkind to finance professionals, but I feel like that answer came from a CFO, not a CEO.
I think you might be right there.
I don't know. I mean, I'm biased by my own experiences as well, but I do think the way we define work needs to shift away from time spent and more towards value delivered.
Yeah.
And if you think about it in those terms as well, you're more likely to do all these other things for your people because you understand that actually makes them more productive anyway. It's the right thing to do, as I say quite a lot, but it's also the best thing to do for your business. So any argument you have for not doing it is flawed at best.
Yeah.
And yet it still seems to be the prevailing view.
Because we're stuck in, and I worked in a lot of institutions lots of places where it's like, we do things this way because we've always done them this way.
Yeah. I hate that as well. It's easier. That's what it is. People don't have to think about it as much, and there's no change involved. And
it's easier for somebody.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting. One place I remember, like I had just arrived in the organisation and they were doing this big organisational rejig. And they were asking, they had a working group, so they asked people to come in. And I was like, I volunteered myself because I'm new. I've worked in other similar organisations. I'm new. I'll go in and give so that I'm fresh to it. But it basically recreated a very similar structure to the one that they already had. So, and I've seen that happen time and again, which is just really interesting. And I did politics at university and looked at John Rawls did this. Theory of justice was his main thing, and then he talked about the veil of ignorance and this idea of constructing like a new political system, a new social system, where you didn't, from the point of view where you don't know where you're going to end up in it. And again, it looked quite similar to the social democracy that we have now. So it's very hard for us to take ourselves out of what we've always done.
Yeah, this is the way we've always done it. It's just such a bad idea, isn't it? Such a bad rationale.
And also because this is the way we've always done it. And then we layer on change that is about improving the way that we've always done it. But then like the way we've always done it is going off on in this direction towards an endpoint that we never really meant to get to. But actually, if you go, well, actually, we're going here. Is there a different way of doing this? And you find you're going in a different direction, but it's better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can't think of a specific example, but you know,
well, I mean, one that always jumps out to me in this is Kodak and Blockbuster, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like we keep doing this business in this way because it's the way we've always done it. We've always made money doing it. Meanwhile, Netflix are like, cool.
Yeah.
you crack on with that. I'll be having all your customers. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Was it Netflix that started by sending out DVDs in the post?
I can't remember. Yeah, they did start that way. I think there was another one. Oh, what was it? We paid for it for like 3 years. Love Film, something like that.
Yeah.
Which I think is the one Amazon bought in the end.
Oh, okay.
Which became Amazon Prime, and they very quickly stopped sending discs. But it's that, you know, on the one hand, like from the business, with the business hat on, I can understand that decision-making process because you're looking for the minimum risk. And so you base that on past performance, don't you? But there's also, you've got to be open and looking for those opportunities and making sure you don't get left behind.
Yeah.
Which, feels like it's the whole point of leadership and management in a business context a lot of the time. But anyway.
We're going round in circles as we anticipated.
Yes, there is a whole thing around the social contract as well, and the the way businesses manage change and implement change. And I think it's a really interesting story you shared there, where they ended up pretty much in the same place as they started after this long process. And for me, that often occurs because whoever's responsible for the change either has their own agenda and are quite happy with the way things were and don't want it to change, or they're not involving the people who are actually directly going to be affected by it.
Yeah.
Which you've got to do. Like, it's back to cater to the individual, isn't it? And create that environment for each of them to succeed.
Yeah. But also to change things, like, because then the whole organization needs to change underneath it. But if you've got people who've been there a really long time and are really entrenched in their ways of doing things, that they'll find a way of making it go back to how it was anyway.
They'll just ignore you, to be honest.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing that effective communication piece and involving them in the process as well, and making them feel a bit of ownership of the change.
Yeah, and I think that process, they were at the time. It started under one chief exec, and then the chief exec changed. The next one was great, and he was really good at making sure that people were involved in decision making and informed and things like that. So that was helpful. But then you just always got the old timers who are really kind of like, they're just anticipating it won't make any difference because they've seen it all before.
Yeah, and sadly, a lot of the time they're probably right. But
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been on both sides of that. I've been that stick in the mud, don't want to change this person. And then I've also been the person trying to implement the change and getting really frustrated when people don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the difference between done by us and done to us is the key, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I learned from that experience. Yeah. I know you need to leave soon. So couple more questions. I think we've answered or covered most of the things anyway around your work and all of the issues we talked about. I mean, we covered off, I think we covered off why business owners struggle to do this, offer this sort of support for women's health.
Yeah.
And we've probably covered most of the myths.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things you'd asked, like the question you sent was around biggest myths about what I do as a women's health coach. And I think one of the key things there is that is that I'm not just going to tell you to go on HRT and take some supplements. That can sometimes be, that's the only because the marketing and the messaging at the moment around menopause is that that's the only route, like that's how you look after yourself, is the HRT and supplements. And it's brilliant that the HRT is now better and more effective and more readily available, although there are still supply issues. But there are so many supplements out there that women can end up practically rattling if they follow that. If they're in my Instagram feed or all of my social media feeds can end up full of this, a mushroom gummy here and a greens powder there and collagen supplements there and red light therapy here and et cetera, microdosing X, Y, and Z. And it's like, what I tend to do and what I think it's so helpful for every woman in this midlife phase is that getting to know yourself, like what is going on for me now really, like where is the balance in how I feel about how well supported do I feel at work and at home, with my physical and mental health, how well nourished am I with the food on my plate and the things that I'm doing in my life? Is it just this kind of constant churn of work and home and work and home and work and home? Is there time for fun and joy? And like that integrative part of my work is about like, let's take the bigger picture of who you are as a woman and who you want to be next. Because there is a choice now that we can take. It's like, what kind of postmenopausal woman do I want to be? It's called, in so many cultures, in the Chinese culture, it's called the second spring. In Japanese culture, it's called something else that is very much about this next chance. Like, like you've got this wise woman phase. You can decide whether you want to be a grumpy old witch, which is sometimes how I feel. Or if you want to be this, like, tune into real kind of queen energy, like I am going to reign over this next phase of my life. And that's a really important part of the work that I do with my clients, but also any woman going through this phase. It's like, it's not just about the physical transition. It's about this emotional, not always spiritual transition as well. Who do I want to be next? How do I want to organize my life? And who do I want to be? And I think sometimes at the moment, I love that there's so much more conversation about menopause, perimenopause, but that we're missing a piece of the puzzle that's about the woman in the middle and who she is now and who she wants to be sometimes.
Yeah,
who she wants to be as a leader. I mean, I think it's a great time in our lives to step into leadership roles. So.
Yeah. I feel like there's a missed opportunity for businesses and organizations if it takes until that stage of life for women to get into leadership. But yes, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I think it's a very on-brand, optimistic way to look at that, and I really like it. Yeah. If I can say that, as it's something I will never go through, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's because I started learning about it 12 years ago, and I started tracking my menstrual cycle. So, like, that's a really great way of getting to know yourself. Like that kind of just what's your energy like every day. You can use it to track physical symptoms. I tend to use it on kind of mood and energy because those are the things that have such an impact on the rest of my life. And then you can go, oh yeah, I've been extra low this month. What have I done that's like, I've stopped drinking alcohol, but partly because I had really bad reactions to it now, but partly because I could see the impact it had on my mood, my premenstrual mood particularly, or on my sleep. So yeah,
the effect it has on sleep is something a lot of people don't join their dots. I think they think, it's a depressant, therefore it's going to help me sleep. And that has not been my experience either.
No, it might help you get to sleep initially, but you'll generally wake up at 3 a.m. and the quality of your sleep will be worse. So it's like...
Yeah. Or 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. and so on.
Thinking about everything that you've said the day before as well.
Yeah, or like early onset hangover, I mean, it depends on the quantity, doesn't it, I guess? Yeah.
Well, that's it. I actually get an instant hangover now.
Oh,
so
wow.
I don't drink at all. Like literally, my brain, my head goes fuzzy and I get a bit of a headache.
Oh, well, fair enough. Yeah, there's no point then. If you can't even delay the impact, like no point in that at all.
The odd glass of Prosecco somehow doesn't trigger it. So I will, it was my 50th birthday recently, and I literally I went to my over 50s checkup at the doctor's, and she was like, how much alcohol do you drink? And I was like, well, I had 2 glasses of Prosecco on my 50th birthday, and that was it last month. Like, oh, okay. Well, I think we'll put you down as nothing, shall we?
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point, though. I do find that as well. Like different types have different effects. So there are some things I won't drink at all anymore because, yeah. Anyway, let's not talk
Hey, we've
about our
gone down
drinking
another
habits.
tangent.
Nobody wants to hear about my drinking habits. They might, they don't need tips, I'm sure. Okay, so time being an issue, time for 2 quick questions.
Yeah, sure.
One's fun, one's probably difficult, but we'll see how you get on. So the fun one then, if you had a time machine, how far back in your life would you travel and what would you say to your younger self?
That's really interesting. I think it's like sometime in my mid-20s where I had an amazing time. I had jobs where I traveled all over the world. At one point I had 3 passports because I was always sending one off for visas and stuff. But there was this like sense of, I need to accomplish these things before I'm 30. Like this sense of rush and hurry. And I think I would just go back to that younger self. I'd get her to start tracking her cycle because like then I could manage my moods a little bit better. I was quite grumpy, just for 2 days a month. But if like nowadays, I know I'm going to be grumpy. So it was like, oh, it's fine. I actually don't mind because I know I am. So it's okay. Just give me space, everybody. I get her to start tracking her menstrual cycle and make friends with her periods because I think it's really, really powerful. And the other thing would be to just kind of remind myself that I've got like 50 years of good health ahead of me at least. And so therefore I've got all the time in the world to achieve what I want to and not worry about it so much. I think those would be the things.
Yeah, I like that. The kind of sense of not rushing. I think we could all have benefited from that in our 20s. Because you think, it's weird, isn't it? Like at the same time, in youth, you have that sense of being invincible and you're going to live forever, but you're also in a hurry to do everything and not take your time with anything.
Yeah,
it's a weird paradox.
I did quit my job when I was 30 and went traveling around the world for a bit. So actually, maybe I didn't need that lesson at
Fair
all.
enough. Yeah. Okay, last question is my favourite one. It's called Leadership Heroes.
Leadership Heroes.
So if you had to pick one person, and a lot of people have pushed back against the one recently, but anyone you like, they could be alive or dead, past or present, real or fictitious, but someone who perfectly embodies leadership. Who is that for you and why?
So this was really, the person who came into my head as a fictional character.
Ooh.
And it's because I recently both read the book and saw the play. And it's Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird, because there's something there about his quiet leadership, his commitment to his own values, his ability to empathize and understand people who had completely opposing values to his, and to lead by example and still try and protect those around him from the pain. And probably his parenting wasn't that great, but it's, but that's who sprang to mind. It was like this sense of compassion, commitment to values, boundaries, and seeing something through to the end, even if they knew it wasn't necessarily going to go in their favor. Yeah. That's who came to mind for me.
Yeah, no, it's a cool choice. I don't think he's been chosen before. He might have been shortlisted and then not made it to someone's choice.
I had a really long list that I'm not even going to go through. And but this was the one that came up first. And I think it's because I recently reread the book, watched the play. And, I really wanted to choose a woman. But those values all feel very feminine. Like that's a man who is kind of, those values that value and way of working, we might associate that empathy, that compassion, that we might associate that with kind of feminine leadership, but actually that's perfectly portrayed by man.
Yeah, and even more impressive actually, given how old the story is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
No, great choice. Thank you for that. Thanks for that. Well, Lesley, I've had a great time. We could have kept going for another half an hour, but I know you have another appointment to go to. Yeah. So the only thing left for me to ask is if anyone in the audience wants to know more about you and your work, where can they find out more things?
Oh, thank you, David. I've really enjoyed our conversation. And we could just go on and on. I've got a whole list of other things I could talk to you. And many things that I wasn't intending to. So it's been great.
It's always the
I love
way.
conversations like that. Those are the best ones. So you can get hold of me. LesleyWaldron.co.uk is my website and I've got lots of blogs there on perimenopause. There's a lot on rest and boundaries and things like that. Or you can find me on Instagram at Lesley Waldron Health Coach or on LinkedIn. And if you are interested in any of the things that I've said about menstrual cycle tracking or perimenopause health, I've got a couple of free downloads that you can find in both of those places, in all of those places, that can be really helpful to get you started.
Lovely. Well, I will put some or all of those links down in the show notes so everyone can find them easily. And,
thank you.
Yeah, that's all we've got time for. Thank you again so much for being with us today. Really enjoyed this.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, David.
Lesley, thank you again for your time today. Appreciate we cut it a bit short there because I know I've said this like 15 times already in the last 20 minutes, but I was conscious that you had something else to get to. So thank you for giving us the time and being so generous with that. And thank you for perhaps making yourself late for your next appointment. I hope we didn't put anyone's noses out of joint with that. But we did get the best questions done and more, and loads of lovely tangents there. Really good to learn from your experiences, hear your lessons of leadership too. And it was a really great discussion. So thank you again so much, Lesley. Listener, viewer, thank you for being with us. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did and that you learned as much as I did too. As I said at the beginning, if you want to know more about Lesley and her work, do check those show notes. Her website is there. There's a couple of resources that she asked me to post as well. And you can get her LinkedIn details too if you'd like to reach out, perhaps learn more about the work she does or see about working with her yourself. Also, don't forget, you can come and join our Integrity Leaders online community. Visit that website. It's leadingwithintegrity.co.uk. Also in the show notes, also on the screen again. Plenty of stuff to learn on the website itself. And when you're ready, you can either take the Leadership Heroes quiz, learn a bit more about your current leadership challenges, perhaps identify a surprising leadership hero. They are all sci-fi themed, spoiler alert. Perhaps something else to inspire you on your leadership journey. Or you can jump right in with both feet, join us at the Integrity Leaders community, hit that green button on the website. Or you can, of course, always do both of these things, the quiz and joining up straight away. Feel free. I'm not going to stop you. And I hope to welcome you aboard the community very, very soon. As always, if you have questions, you can drop me a message on LinkedIn. My profile is down in the show notes. You'll find that link hopefully very, very easily. Well, that's all I have time for today. Thanks again for being with us. Do join me again next week when I'm talking with Joel Miller. He'll be sharing some of his, what he calls contrarian leadership lessons. It's definitely a bit of a left field one. It's rare to have a successful business founder who has consciously chosen not to have a giant team. And in fact, I believe it's just him and his brother, but we'll hear more about that next week. And the leadership lessons that he has, despite not having anyone directly reporting to him, are very, very pertinent, relevant, interesting. So do join us then. Not one you want to miss. And in the meantime, as always, stay safe and be a leader, not a boss.